Hello. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. The thing didn't show me that we'd gone live, so I assume we're live now. Hello, everybody. We'll be starting in just a second.
I do see us on.
Good. Close all the tabs, and by all I mean 4 tabs. And we're also going to send the tweets.
Lightweight. That's you.
All right. Let me switch out of the Windows Central account. There we are. All right, I should be ready to go.
Just let me line your video up. Oh, I'm not I'm not yellow this week, I don't think. I think the white balance actually came out all right.
Well, also I'm really short for some reason this week. I don't know what is happening here. I think your camera's zoomed in. Let me see if I can zoom mine in.
Did you send the tweet out?
I did. There we
go. Oh, okay. For some reason to get notified. All right, I retweeted. I am, let's see. All right, I'm now recording.
I am now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 244 for October 15th, 2021. Hey, everyone. Ooh, voice is going already. Everyone, welcome to the Windows Central Podcast with Daniel Rubino and Zach Bowden for another exciting episode where we talk about all things Microsoft, Windows 11, Xbox mini fridges, Surfaces, and whatever else happened in tech this week. Speaking of this week, we do have new builds coming for Windows 11, which I am currently running, and across the spectrum. So for release preview, beta, and dev channel all got updates. We'll talk a little bit about Emoji Gate, dun dun dun, which is making me mad at Microsoft for multiple reasons. One, that I have to care suddenly about emojis when I don't, but yet I kind of do care. And there's a little bit of a principle here. So we'll go through that controversy that, I think about 1,000 people on this planet actually will care about. The Notepad UI leak, the biggest story of 2021. Notepad is getting a visual refresh. Apparently it got leaked. Zach also has something on Windows as sub Linux. Is that what it is? WSL? What is it? Windows for sub Linux.
Windows subsystem for Linux.
System for Linux. There we go. I knew there was a sub in there. That's in the store now and it's gotten updated as well. We'll talk a little bit about some of the Surface devices, specifically Pro 8, Laptop Studio, 2 weeks on, what we're thinking. I also did publish a guide on how to upgrade the SSD in Pro 8. So I'll talk a little bit about that experience because, like all things these days, it's super simple and yet incredibly intricate and complicated. But I did all the work for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Speaking of, we'll talk about the eGPU experience too, because I did run Surface Laptop Studio from the eGPU last time, running the 3080. And it worked, but I'll talk a little bit about why I'm pulling back on that experience a little bit, and add some caveats to that because I published that as well. Of course, talk about that Xbox mini fridge, Windows 10 devices and PCs being cheaper than Windows 11 ones, and what that could possibly mean. A little bit about the Surface Duo finally arriving next week. Surface Duo 2, I should say. Surface Duo 1 also got an update. And the thing of the week, if we actually can think of the thing of the week. I'm not sure if I've thought of one. Oh, yeah, I'm going to rant on Squid Game. Because I know everybody loves that show, and I think it was terrible, which may surprise people, but if you find that enticing, stick to the end. All right, Zach, take us through the Windows Insider builds. Let us know what's new.
Sure. So this week, as is the case most weeks, Microsoft released a Windows Insider build for dev channel users. And this caused quite Um, it was quite earth-shattering, this build this week, because in addition to the sort of minor stuff that these builds are normally introducing, such as an updated update stack, though they don't really talk about what that really improves. They mention they are beginning to test an update stack package that delivers update improvements outside of major OS updates, such as new builds. Very vague description for what that could be. That could mean a lot for Windows Update in the future, but as of right now, that's all they're telling us. But the big thing that this week's build introduced, which was 22478, is new emoji, which Microsoft actually announced that they were doing new emoji, redesigning all of their emojis back in, I want to say, June timeframe, sort of around the Windows 11 event and whatnot. And everybody saw the new emojis. They were looking great. They had shadows. They looked 3D. They had some animations to them in some cases. They looked really cool. So when the emojis arrived in the build today or earlier this week, that's actually not what we got. Instead, we got essentially flattened 2D versions of those designs. So they're similar to what was unveiled back in June, but certainly not the same. They definitely don't have the same sort of look and feel to them. They still very much look sort of 2D and not very eye-popping, unlike the actual ones that they unveiled back in June. And this has caused a lot of fallout on the social medias, if you will. Lots of people in the comment section of these tweets that the Insider team post out, and underneath the articles on our website and whatnot, with people who are expressing their severe disappointment that these emojis are certainly not what Microsoft had promised back in June. And you know what? These comments are mostly right. These are not the emojis that Microsoft unveiled back in June. Microsoft did not ever at any point mention that there would be 2D variants of the 3D emojis, which, by the way, would be what is used in Windows 11, which is crazy because Windows 11 is sort of their main sort of flagship product. Why aren't we getting the flagship emoji? No answers from Microsoft on this. They've just sort of put this in the changelog and said, hey, these are the emojis we announced, which they are certainly not. So I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Dan. I know you actually like emojis, so please do tell me.
Are you outing me as an emoji user?
I am outing you as an emoji user.
I even have Bitmoji, which I love Bitmoji. If you can get your Bitmoji to look like you, it's incredibly uncanny and weird when you use them, and hilarious. But so this makes me mad just because it's a classic example of Microsoft over-promising, under-delivering. And part of it is not even like over-promising. Like the over-promise came in the fact that they showed it and they said, this is what's coming. And then the reality was different, right? They are better looking than the Windows 10 ones. Everybody kind of agrees there. But this wasn't like they were consciously trying to lie to us. Apparently, it looks like the design team got ahead of the story here and posted images of what they were working on and idealized for PR, which is fine. And that differed from what the actual reality of what was going to be shipping. So it sounds more like crossed wires. We've seen this before in industry where PR or people put out images and it's not quite. And sometimes you see that little disclaimer, final product may not be what it is, You see this sometimes with prototypes. Companies will do a prototype, and then the actual release comes out, it's not as cool. Cars are like this. You see a lot of cars are like, this is what a car will look like in the year 2025. And then you get it, it's like, oh, it looks like So I understand that. But, and Microsoft has gotten better at trying to fix these things. But this is still a big miss, right? I mean, this just looks bad,
and it's really a shame because emoji is one of those weird things that are so minor in life, but means so much to lots of people. Like a lot of people were looking forward to Windows 11 because of these new emoji that they unveiled back in June, and the emoji we have in the build are definitely not worthy of upgrading to Windows 11. They're just slight refreshes of essentially the Windows 10 ones. So like it is, like if this was any other feature, I don't think people would care as much. But to a lot of people, emoji are personable, and the fact that we're not getting the stuff that people latched onto back in June is what I think is causing this outrage.
Yeah, I mean it's dumb, right? Because here we are talking about emoji like it's actually important,
right?
And it's not, but it's the principle of it.
Exactly.
And it's not like they showed off. We saw in a video, oh look, they have new emoji. Like they made a big deal about these
yes,
things.
they did. Yeah.
And they kind of and at the time it felt appropriate because everybody was like, yeah, those are awesome. You know, like it was weird to get excited over. And they put it on all their socials and on Twitter. They had articles on design written about it. Like they were really patting themselves on the back. And like I said, it felt earned because the consensus was, yeah, damn, those look really nice. I can't wait to get them. And then for them to do this, it's just kind of like, really, even on this, it's an inconsequential thing, right? For those of us who just use computers for work, it's really not that big of a deal. But it's just that cultural thing that they gotta fix. It's just so bad.
And I'm sure they will eventually get around to actually adding the 3D ones. I assume they're not there now because there's a limitation in the kind of emoji that the emoji panel and Windows can display natively. That said, these 3D emojis do exist, and you will likely see them show up within Microsoft's own programs, such as Teams, Skype, Office, etc., etc. Just because Windows has an emoji panel and whatnot doesn't mean the program has to display that exact emoji. You could insert, say, the smiley face emoji, which is the 2D variant in the emoji pickup, but then when you press enter in Teams, the 3D version pops up. That, I think, is what we're going to see at first, and then maybe eventually Microsoft will actually get around to updating the actual emoji picker and the native emojis within Windows with the 3D versions, which have the shading and the shadows behind certain parts and whatnot. Which I think we can all agree they look way better than the 2D versions. I'm sure there's also an accessibility argument to be made in regards to the 2D versions as well. Maybe that's one of the reasons. I don't know. That's just me speculating at this point. But yeah, it is a real shame, and it is a perfect example of Microsoft's inability to communicate and their miscommunication. We use the phrase clear as mud often when talking about Microsoft announcements and their phrasing around things. And you go back and read that design blog, as Dan mentioned, it's very open about this whole 3D aspect. It's coming to Windows and Office. They mention those words and say those things. And then what we get in Windows 11 is certainly not what they were sort of hyping up back in June. So yeah, it is a shame, and I totally understand the outrage. Microsoft is in the wrong here. There's no getting around it. There's no excuse for them to really make. If they were clear back in June and said, hey, we have 2D versions that Windows 11 will get, then sure, the outrage would be less, allowed, I guess. But since they didn't say that, sure, this is totally acceptable that people are upset at this. But I guess my advice is, let's not get too worked up over drawings.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's why I tell people, it's like, I'm in my 40s. I shouldn't really care this much about emoji. and the fact that Microsoft is making me take a position on this because of their ineptitude is just like really that's what makes me mad. It's like I have to now kind of care about this topic. Thank God Jez Corden, in his insomnia-induced state right now, wrote up a snarky article basically capturing our view, which is, Microsoft's on the wrong here. And then he also shared some tweets of people, not directly linking to them, but people really overreacting to this too. We've been scammed and all this kind of stuff, which is hilarious because, mind you, Windows 11 is a free update. And, I guess that gets back a little bit to the, some people talk about, someone actually apologized to me. They're like, I'm sorry with the Windows 11. This was like on Reddit or something like that, basically saying that, like, you must have a lot of work cut out for you because of all the bugs with Windows 11. And I'm like, having been in this industry now since around 2007, living through Windows 8, Windows 10, Windows 11 is a walk in the park. Like, there are some issues. We can talk about them, right? The AMD processor thing. If you don't know, this is a very, like, some AMD processors and some applications may experience a 3 to 5% performance drop. And if that doesn't sound very niche, I don't know what is. Like, it's not across the board. I don't know in what world I could tell a 3 to 5% performance drop on my computer. Like, I don't know what that looks like. Because if you ever do Control Delete and run the task manager and just watch stuff, and you like watch the some of the background tasks, sometimes they take up resources. I get it if you're gaming. Like, I could see if you're gaming and you get 61 frames per second, and now because of Windows 11, you're getting like 57. Like, okay, that's like that that's a little bit annoying. And I think that's kind of where people would be seeing this. That's going to be fixed like I think it's this week. Actually,
Yeah,
it's
so
rolling out now.
I would just got to mention, in
Build.
addition to the dev
Yeah.
channel build, there was a beta and release preview channel build as well, build 22000.282, which will roll out to production within the next few weeks, and it does include a fix for this bug that Dan's talking about, so that's good news.
Yeah. But like that's kind of the biggest hardware issue we face right
Yeah.
now. And it's a very minor thing, especially because AMD chips are still vast minority of the PCs out there. But like compared to even Windows 10 and some other updates in the past through Windows 10, we haven't had to write about people's losing their files during the update, losing data, blue screen or green screens of death, although I had one the other night. But I was on an insider build. We're not getting those instability things, the real dramatic ones. Like even that bug we had a couple of weeks ago on the insider channel where you didn't have the taskbar.
Yeah.
Like that was severe. And people are like, oh my God, they're going to release this thing soon. But, we haven't had that issue on the production stuff. So what's happened instead is because of that, people are focusing on the nitpicking, which I get. It's fine. Like we've had this conversation before. Zach cares very much about the design and consistencies, and he's very good at pointing that stuff out, which for me just goes right over my head. I don't notice it. I don't care about it. For me, Windows is a tool. I just turn it on. I need to accomplish things. And I told someone this on Twitter. I kind of felt bad. I'm like, it's a tool, not a date. I don't really care what it looks like. I turn it on to accomplish a task. The fact that we can bemoan rounded corners, or if you dig deep enough, you can find some older menus, I think is actually a good thing in the sense like that's it. That's what people are complaining about. Yeah. And I know there's like the taskbar thing, right? Oh, the right click doesn't have as many features. And I get for power users, that's a big deal. I'm not here to tell you don't care about that stuff. If that bothers you, sure. Put it in the feedback hub. Let's talk about all that kind of stuff. I'm just saying in the scheme of things of how a pretty major OS rollout has gone, this has been very smooth. Like we are not writing these, oh my God, this is the end kind of thing. So I think it's nice that we're focusing sort of on this nitpicking stuff about people complaining about the new start menu. It's just like, okay, that's the worst of it. That's your biggest complaints. Yeah, I think the Microsoft team the Windows team would probably take that. So
yeah. So yeah, that's basically everything going on in the Insider program this week. Not a huge week for new features other than the emoji stuff. At least there's something to talk about. But yeah, like we're heading into sort of the holiday time frame now, so I'm not expecting huge movements in the Windows space, not until early next year. But yeah, like this is, Windows 11 is shipping now, so everything that's in the dev channel at this point, and I guess technically the beta channel, is post Windows 11 RTM, though a lot of the fixes, specifically the fixes, and although I do believe the emoji does fall into this as well, will be backported to the shipping release of Windows 10 within the coming months. So you don't have to wait until fall next year for the next major Windows 11 update to get all of the improvements and fixes that are going into dev channel or the emojis. They will actually come to the shipping version of Windows 11 before then, so that's good to see. Switching gears slightly, earlier this week, let's talk a little bit about Notepad, I guess. Why not? I'm almost certain I've mentioned that Notepad's getting an update on this podcast many times before, but this week, an employee at Microsoft, I don't know who it was, and I feel sorry for them because they probably didn't know that they weren't allowed to tweet about it. But they posted screenshots of the new Notepad, which is using WinUI, I believe, and it's got a modern design and whatnot. It still looks like the old Notepad. They've not really moved things around. It's a text editor. There's not really much you can do with it. But it is using modern sort of flyouts now and whatnot. Has its sort of new settings page with the ability to theme the app, so I assume that confirms it has dark mode and whatnot now. And yeah, Notepad is actually getting an update after however many years not really being touched. Oh, I guess they had technically updated it a few times in the last few years with new additions, but the UI has certainly not been touched since Windows Vista, probably. Yeah. So yeah, they are finally giving it a new UI to sort of match the rest of Windows 11, rounded corners, fluid animations, and whatnot. I don't know if there's any other additional new features outside of the theming stuff I just mentioned. I doubt there will be. I think Notepad's one of those things that they really they're damned if they do, damned if they don't. If they mess around with it too much, people get annoyed. If they don't touch it enough, people get annoyed. So I think giving it a UI refresh essentially is what they're doing, is the right way to go about things, because then people who want to see that sort of thing change that are happy, and then people who don't want its functionality to change are also happy. So yeah, we'll see when that shows up. I'm guessing it will show up in the Insider program within the next couple of months. This wasn't officially announced, so who knows at this point. Another sort of app related thing, I guess, Microsoft announced this week that the Windows subsystem for Linux is now available as an app through the Microsoft Store, and that's interesting. Microsoft says that their goal is to sort of move everybody over to, if you're using the subsystem for Linux, move everybody over to accessing it via the store rather than using the Windows features on/off toolbox that's built into Windows. And because what this allows them to do essentially is to provide faster updates to it. Instead of having to push them through Windows Update or wait for the next major version of Windows, they can just ship an update to the Microsoft Store, and then the subsystem for Linux is updated. So that's essentially the main reason why they're doing it. And the reason I wanted to mention it on this podcast is I believe this is how the Android subsystem for Linux is going to work as well. When you download, say, the Amazon App Store, it downloads the subsystem in the background along with it. So then when you run the Amazon App Store, the subsystem is already there, powered up and ready to go for you. And I believe that's exactly how that's going to work for Android apps, and the subsystem for Linux being an app in the store sort of confirms that is how that's going to work. So for those who was wondering how Android apps were going to work, I think we've now got our answer. The question is, when will those show up? We don't know. We're still waiting for them. I do believe Microsoft wants to get them into testing before the end of this year for insiders. Whether or not they ship to the existing version of Windows 11, or if they wait for the next fall's release, I don't know. I know for a fact that they are testing it on this shipping version of Windows 11 right now, build 22,000, because like I said, it is packaged as an app. They can install it as I guess it's an MSIX bundle, and they are testing it on the RTM build, in addition to the sort of vNext build as well. So who knows what they'll do, but yes, that is certainly on its way, and I will be very excited to see how that works. I have been told through sources who have been testing it internally, it works surprisingly well. Obviously, this will depend on your hardware. If you're running it on a Pentium or a Celeron, then maybe it's not going to work so well. But if you're on anything sort of flagship level, or an Intel Core i5 or i7 with 8 gigs minimum of RAM, then most people have said it's that surprisingly well. So there you go.
But is it good? Will I use it?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this. The only real reason I would use it is for A, banking apps, or B, Philips Hue, so I can control my lights. That's the only reason.
Yeah. There's no official Philips Hue app, but there is unofficial ones.
Oh, you're talking about through the Amazon app? Yeah. So that's the biggest problem I think people are going to have with this, is the Amazon App Store is kind of a desert.
Oh, no. I was going to say there's a UWP.
I see what you mean. Sorry, yeah, I was thinking specifically Android. But yeah, on the subject of the Amazon App Store, it is kind of a desert. I've sort of looked through it. It's not great. So luckily, you can sideload Android apps using the subsystem for Android. So that will hopefully get by a lot of issues that people have with not being able to find the apps they actually want to use. But yeah, the Amazon App Store is a long way away from being useful, I think.
I think someone's asking how are you going to run Android ARM apps on native ARM?
Well,
so here's the beauty is the architecture is the same.
Yeah.
So
the work's already been done.
Yes.
There's
the challenge of getting Android apps to run on a PC is x86.
Yeah.
Not ARM.
And that's where the Intel bridge thing that they mentioned comes in. That's what that is. That converts the ARM stuff.
Which
so
AMD
that
is also going to use.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. AMD can also use it. Yeah. That converts the
Look
ARM
at that.
stuff.
Intel carrying AMD into the future.
You sound like a
that's why you
fanboy.
can't always slam on Intel here.
Yeah. So yeah, anyway, I think that's basically everything in the Windows world, unless I'm missing something. I didn't put on my to-do. I closed to-do for some reason. No, yeah, that's everything.
I just want to address something. Still disappointed my HP X360 G2 laptop doesn't meet processor requirements for Windows 11. I don't want to go through the back door by installing Windows 11 and losing security updates. Don't be a wuss.
I thought you was going to...
No, I mean, I get the hesitation here, but I'm very confident, Zach's very confident saying, and we've already proven it this week with the cumulative updates, if you install Windows 11 through the media creation tool in ISO. Look, there's a reason why Microsoft could have hard blocked that. That is an option. There is no reason why they could not have in that installer. It could have done a CPU check and been like ping, 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 your hardware, TPM, nope, sorry, and that's it. That's the end of the installation. Now, someone would have hacked around that, of course, too,
Right.
because it's Windows. But Microsoft did not put any hard blocks into the media creation tool or ISO. That should tell you something. They could have. They're not going to block security updates for unsupported devices because that creates even a worse problem for them, which is they know a lot of people are going to do this with Windows 11 on unsupported hardware. Those devices then are at risk. Maybe there's a virus or a worm or some kind of ransomware that attacks those computers and causes them problems because now they're going to be like, well, we said we weren't going to support them, so they're not going to get security updates to fix this stuff, and we're not going to push it to those devices. So, that's that. So you're definitely going to get security updates. The question is, and even this is, will you get major milestone updates for Windows 11?
Right.
Like next year, we're expecting like a milestone update. Will you get that? But even then, I think this is what Zach's going to say.
Yeah.
You can just download the new ISO and MSD, and you'll just do an in-place upgrade, meaning you're not wiping your computer. It'll just upgrade to the new version. You may have to wait a couple of days, but you'll just do that. So I feel very confident in saying you can install this on old devices. Now, the only risk is, and this is what Microsoft says, is on older hardware, which we're not officially supporting, the stability is not as good as the hardware are. They're saying there's a lot more. There's more kernel crashes. Now, what is more? What's a lot? We can't quantify that, but it is less stable. Does that mean every time you turn your computer on, you're going to get blue screens of death? Probably not. It just means that if there is an issue and it's related to your processor, Microsoft's not going to come out with a patch to fix that specific device.
And the key word there is if. I think for a large majority of these unsupported PCs, which only really call out the CPU as being a problem, your stability will be fine. Microsoft has to cover their back by saying, you are not eligible for updates and stuff. We've already been able to confirm it. The security patch Tuesday just went this week, and those rolled out to unsupported PCs running Windows 11. They got it, they installed it, no problems, no blue screens. It just took it as if it was an officially supported PC, which is not a surprise. As we've said on this podcast many times, we would have been shocked if Microsoft hard blocked that as well, even though they were saying we cannot guarantee and you're not eligible for security updates. They say that to cover their own backs because they don't want to be liable for these unsupported PCs running Windows 11. You were technically aren't eligible for support. If you were to call up Microsoft and say, hey, there's a problem with my PC, and you told them it was running Windows 11 and it was unsupported, they'd be like, well, that's your loss, goodbye.
Exactly.
And that's the risk, right? But like I said, I think any PC from 2015 onwards is probably going to be fine running Windows 11. I would be very shocked if there are any actual stability problems or driver issues or anything of the sort running Windows 11 unsupported. And you can try it today, and Windows does have a thing where you've got 10 days to roll back. So you give it a few days, try out all the things you use and stuff, figure it out and make sure it works for you. And I think it will. I think it will work for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't think do I have any other sub-rants for this week in Windows 11.
No, I think that's everything.
Okay. Let's move on to some of the Surface stuff. So, heads up on this podcast, if I do suddenly drop off, I am pushing again the boundaries of what you can do. This week, I'm running Surface Pro 8 connected to a Razer Core X eGPU with a RTX 3080 in it. And I'm also connected through the other port to a Thunderbolt 4 dock, which is powering the Brio camera, HyperX microphone, Razer keyboard and mouse, as well as a 27-inch display. It's all working. So I just want to mention that because we did do this sort of last week or the last podcast with the Laptop Studio, and it was working too. But I've since written an article, and I should have amended a little bit of part of it. I do not recommend getting Surface Laptop Studio with the RTX GPU and plan to run it with an eGPU. There are still issues in Windows when you basically get 3 GPUs, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to have Intel Iris Xe, the native graphics, then you're going to have your RTX 3050 Ti or the A2000 if you get the business version, and now you're plugging in the eGPU, and all 3 actually get listed. And that
we should real quick. We should just sort of clarify, because it was a kind of weird thing for me when I first realized it. The reason we mentioned 3 and the Iris Xe is because on the Laptop Studio, and I believe most sort of laptop grade devices with GPUs in them, the integrated graphics is still there. It's not a one. They don't just take out integrated graphics and put in the dedicated graphics. And the reason they do that is for battery life. It would suck up a lot of battery life to have a full GPU running the whole time. So what Windows does, Windows is smart enough to hand off most of the sort of non-GPU heavy related tasks to the integrated GPU. That saves power. And then when you load up a program that requires more graphics power, then Windows switches it to the dedicated GPU. And that's where the problems lie, right? Because Windows like, which one do I use?
I'm sorry, I'm just responding to someone. Yeah, so the problem with the Laptop Studio and that eGPU is like what Zach was talking about. The system kind of gets confused. I did end up having stability issues, so much so that I lost the display driver, period. So when the computer, it would reboot, I would see the Surface logo. Okay, display's on. And then that was it. It would just go black. And I wasn't even able to recover. I would go into the recovery mode. Hey, can you fix this? Nope, sorry, can't fix it. So I ended up having to test the Microsoft Surface Recovery Disk.
Which is an ancient relic.
Yeah, but they fixed that too. So the joke was, I showed Zach this, was when I reinstalled Windows 11 on Surface Laptop Studio, it went back to like the very first build. It was like almost like a hybrid Windows 10, Windows 11 thing. Yeah. And of course, I saw the cumulative update and updated. I then got it all back working, and the next day plugged it back into the eGPU, started using it, and ran into the exact same problem. So, here's for science. So I had to redo it all again. This is how I spend my weekends, by the way, which I was not happy about. But then they kind of I noticed they fixed this now. So now when it does install this old version, but as you're going through the out-of-box experience, the screen pops up and says, we're just going to check for some updates. And when it's doing that, it's actually downloading the latest version with the latest firmware and drivers and installing that. So when you do hop back into the actual Windows 11, you're actually up to date for the most part. There's a couple little minor things that get updated. But so that works well. Now, someone pointed out in comments, and this was something I missed. It's a very good point. If you want to use an eGPU with the Laptop Studio, the Core i5 model actually becomes a lot more interesting now, because that doesn't have a discrete NVIDIA GPU. You're just getting the Core i5 or an Iris Xe. So that's a really good device if you want Surface laptop, but you want the studio functionality. I actually think that's kind of a sleeper hit of a device. That's also the $1699 one. That device should absolutely work beautifully with an eGPU. You shouldn't run into these issues that I've been experiencing. And so that actually becomes very cool, because now you can save a lot of money. And if you're like, I don't really need a GPU when I'm at a desk and I like to dock it and stuff like that, that's something worth considering. I should point out, though, eGPUs are still super expensive in the scheme of things. The Core X is $399. And then they have the $499 version, which has the ports on the back. So if you want to actually use it for accessories, I recommend that one. So that's $500. That doesn't include the GPU. So now you got to go buy one. And these devices ship with the 3050 Ti. That means in order to get something better, you have to get at least the 3070. And the reason I say this is because eGPUs famously shave off 10 to 20% of performance due to the bandwidth restrictions. So you'll probably only get that even the 3070 might only be like a 3060, which means you ideally want to get a 3080, a 3080 Ti, or a 3090. Those things now are going to be between $2,000 and $3,000.
Yeah. If
you were to buy them because of the pricing. So now you're talking $2,500. And if you really need the ports, maybe a Thunderbolt 4 port, which is another $300, it gets very expensive. At some point, you got to go, maybe it's just easier to just get a prefab gaming system, right? Yeah. Buy from HP or Dell or something like that, and just do that.
This setup only really makes sense if you already have the GPU set up at home. You've already, invested in that before.
Yeah, because it's expensive. You have to remember, as I said, like even if you put a 3080 in there, and I'm doing the benchmarks by the way. So I'm doing this now in the Pro 8s. I'll be doing an article soon. I'll actually this is gonna take me forever because I have a 1080 Ti, I have a 2080 Ti, and I have
Brag
a
about
30.
it.
Well, what's gonna happen is like the Surface Pro 8 becomes way more interesting with an eGPU, and that's what I'm running now, and it does work. This is way more stable. There's occasionally little things I'll plug it in and a keyboard won't come on or something like that, but for the most part, it's been very, very good. But even throwing a 1080 Ti into an eGPU with the Surface Pro 8, you'll see a nice boost in graphics performance, right? Because you're just talking about Iris Xe there. I'm running a 3080 on here, so it actually gets you can seriously game on this thing. I'm talking like 90 frames per second, in like some major titles. That said, if you have a 3080, you're not maximizing its performance by putting it into an eGPU, right? If you really want to maximize it, you put it into a proper desktop with a, hopefully an 8-core CPU. And I have the benchmarks. I'll be kind of comparing between like the HP, what was it? The 34, no, not the NV34, their Omen, the Omen 27. That's a proper 3080 Ti system or 3080 system with Intel Core i9. I'll post those benchmarks, and you're going to see it's a world of difference. The desktop thing will absolutely destroy an eGPU Surface Pro 8. But if you're looking for this one PC setup, yeah, you can. Don't forget, most games are GPU heavy. So yeah, you can totally game on this thing, and it'll be a very good experience. It's an expensive proposition, though, I think, for most people, but it's doable. So there's that. So look forward for that article. I'm collecting the data now. But if you're looking for an eGPU in a Pro 8 experience or just a Thunderbolt 4 dock experience, it runs very well. And I actually kind of like it. It's pretty cool. I also should point out, I did post finally my how-to guide on upgrading the SSD on the Pro 8s. It's a long guide.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's a little bit more. It's easy, but it's more complicated than I was expecting it to be.
It is, yeah. It's one of those things because you can't just go buy the SSD. Like Microsoft doesn't sell the cartridge, what looks like the SSD cartridge, on the website. Like you can't just go buy a 1 terabyte, and even if they did, it would still charge you way more than what it should be, right? They sell it through like the business channels somehow, right? And that's kind of what it's actually designed for. This is actually meant for business and enterprise. So you can do it yourself. It's actually very easy. The whole process takes you less than 20 minutes. I'm talking about even putting Windows 11 back on the SSD. The time-consuming part is sort of the prep work, making sure you have the right screwdriver, making sure you have the right SSD. That's the really tricky part. Deciding if you want to add thermal paste to it and reuse the enclosure. You don't need to, but if you're a completionist, you may want to, and it's no big deal. It will take you an extra 5 minutes tops. I should probably put time estimates in these things into the guide. Maybe I'll do that. But I did the hard work because finding the SSD, I tell you where to get them, tell you what to look for. The rule of thumb is still the Toshiba BG4 drives are the best ones to get. They'll give you very good performance. You can get the 1 terabyte versions. The 1 terabyte came down in price. It was $300. Now it's $200. The downside is Toshiba doesn't direct sell these either to consumers. So you have to go on eBay and buy them through like resellers. The downside there is you're going to order through China or Hong Kong. And it's fine. I've done this before. You just go by their reviews and all this kind of stuff. If you're getting a legit product. But with today's shipping delays, you're going to take 3 to 4 weeks maybe to get this chip. That's fine. Listen, if you're planning to get the Pro 8 and you're planning doing the SSD, just plan these things together and get the chip in advance. Wait a couple of weeks. If you want it now, like I did, there's a new option. Western Digital now makes these are called M.2 2230. That's the size of these. They're like they're like a quarter of the size of a full SSD you see in a laptop. So Western Digital makes them. You can get these for even cheaper. You can actually get a 1 terabyte version for $117 on eBay. And a lot of times you can buy these through people in the US too. And you'll get, I bought mine, it was actually more. I paid 170, but I had it in 3 days, which was awesome. Uh, so you can even save more money. Imagine you can buy the 128 gig Surface Pro 8 and for 117 bucks plus an extra 10 for some tools, upgrade to the 1 terabyte version. Microsoft only sells the 1 terabyte version at $21.99. So like, and even if you bought the Core i7 model, that would be $16.99. You can still, for 200 bucks, you'd be only at $1,800, less than 1,800 instead of $21.99. So you can save a ton of money by doing this. You'll also gain a little bit of speed too in it. But there's a catch with the Western Digitals. Apparently, they're the same drives used in the Xbox Series X and Xbox Series X. And what's happening is they're being repurposed and resold as updates for Pro X and Pro 8. They work. They're very fast. I posted benchmarks of them. It's faster than the regular one. They're more affordable. A lot of times you get them shipped to you faster. So what's the downside? It's the available storage. This is so weird. Apparently, like on a regular 1 terabyte SSD, a true one, you get like 950 gigabytes of actual space. Once you install Windows 11 on it, you're down to, I think it's like 920 or something like that, 930. With these, you're going to start with 866 gigabytes, and after you install Windows 11, like 823 gigabytes. So you're losing 90 gigabytes of potential storage because it's pre-provisioned for Xbox devices, and you can't like get this back.
Is there no way to brute force just that back?
If there is, no one has posted a how-to on that.
Interesting.
I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
It's going to be something you would have to do before you mount the drive.
Sure, yeah.
So it's going to be, I'm sure maybe that someone may figure that out at some points, but there's not enough people yet to have done this. So the question you got to ask yourself is, if you're going from 128 gigs to 823 gigs, does 90 gigs matter? To me, it didn't, right? Because it's like, that's a lot. Like you can install a lot of games on that kind of thing. You're saving potentially around $80 and you're getting it shipped faster to you. And it runs beautifully. It's fast, right? But if you're really like, no, I need a terabyte and I want the max I can get out of a terabyte drive, which is like 950 gigs, then go to Toshiba. I don't determine that for you. I bought the Western Digital. I'm using that right now. You could also buy 512 if you want to, of course. I put the prices for these things up there as well, and 256.
So Microsoft earlier this year announced that they were making available an SSD replacement kit for the Pro 7 Plus, which I assume is compatible with the Pro 8 and the Pro X as well. Sure. Unfortunately, it's only available through like authorized Surface resellers. So I don't know if that means you and I can buy one. But Microsoft certainly seems to think that, I guess there are technically ways to do it. I'm trying to click through now to see if I can find any. But that might be an interesting route to go down if you can buy them as a, I guess, consumer, right? Because if they're only available to buy in bulk, then that's not very useful. But if you can buy an individual one, I can't find them anywhere. But if you can buy an individual one, that would be really handy because I'd be interested to see the prices of that as well.
I guarantee you they're going to be overpriced.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. Because these would be like the official ones with like the Microsoft logo. So you're paying a tax for those 4 squares.
It's been tested. They vouch for it. Like they're not going to vouch for the Western Digital thing, right? They're not going to do that. And there's also that question of warranty, right? People always have this like, does it void your warranty? And it's like, it's a gray area. This is what I would tell you is if you're doing this upgrade, simply just save the existing SSD, just put it in a drawer somewhere. You can always pop it back in and it's just going to reboot and just bring you back to where the day you switched it out, right? It'll work fine. If you need to send it in, say the screen cracked or something like that, you'll be able to swap this in and out in under 5 minutes. It's super easy. Just put the old enclosure back in and seal it. They're not going to check. They're not going to notice anything. Like, I wouldn't worry about it at all. You could risk and send in your existing SSD in it. They probably wouldn't notice either if you're reusing the enclosure. They're probably not going to notice it. But that's up to you if you want to take the risk. But I haven't heard of a single story of anyone being rejected for a warranty because they upgraded their SSD. I think it's, again, Microsoft is saying if you swap out the SSD and use an unofficial one, and something goes wrong, we can't fix your SSD problem. That's because you swapped out the SSD. I think that's what they're talking about. So, but this is a great upgrade. I mean, this is again where the value is now coming into pros versus an iPad, right? Because iPads are locked down. Sure, you can upgrade the RAM on this, and I don't think you ever will be able to do that. But you could save a ton of money if you just got, if you're planning on buying the Pro 8, you can buy the lower cost version, follow this guide, and I'm telling you, it's super easy. I wrote a lot, but it's only because I even tell you how to get Windows 11 back on it and all this. You'll be completely covered with this guide. It's a really fast and easy process. I did it one night on the couch, and it was done in like 20 minutes.
But Dan, what about the Surface Laptop Studio?
So this one is, so that one gets a little bit more interesting. So I may look into that. I will say there's way more interest in the Pro 8 and Pro X updating the SSDs because it's a simple door that pops off. And because of the nature of that device being mobile versus Laptop Studio, where Laptop Studio is going to sell in a lot less volume than Pro 8, like a lot less. So there'll be fewer users. Yeah. And I feel like the people who are buying it are going to be like, no, I want the 32 gig RAM version and the 1 terabyte. Like those people are going to kind of put the money out there. That said, I'll kind of look into it. It's a little bit more tricky because you got to peel off the rubber feet. This is becoming a thing now. HP does this too. So you peel off the feet, which is held by like a glue sticker combo, and below that should be the screws, and you got to take those screws out, pull off the bottom. Once you do that, it's actually an easy process. It is the same. You're just unscrewing a single set screw and sliding in and out. It's actually pretty easy.
So
just not sure it's worth my time.
Yeah, so Linus Tech Tips did a video on this. They sort of tried to tear down the Laptop Studio. They did a terrible job. They couldn't get the base off, so they essentially brute forced their way in and bent the whole thing. It wasn't a pretty sight. But yeah, they got in there. And I maybe I'm misremembering, but it looked like the SSD drive was a full size M.2 rather than the short one.
No, I think it is a short one.
Oh, is it short? Okay.
But the space is longer, which some have speculated meaning like you could put in a different size. Because there's a 2230, I think there's a 2250, and maybe there's a 2240. Right. I think you may be able to put in 2240. I don't know. I already have the 1 terabyte version, so I don't feel like like I guess I could try to get the 2 terabyte, but it doesn't feel as important. But if enough people start asking for that, I'll look into it and see what other people have done. But yeah, I'm not really excited about breaking.
I wouldn't risk it personally.
Yeah. And the Linus video was actually pretty good. Yeah. We didn't talk about that really last time, but the review roundups on this stuff was all very positive.
Yeah. There were a couple of outlets mentioned poor battery life, but I do not know what they were doing to get that, because my battery life on mine's been amazing. On 120 hertz, I've been getting through the whole day just fine. But yeah, a couple of reviews mentioned poor battery life. I don't know if they were anomalies or just faulty in some way, or maybe they had some software that was sucking up all the battery life. I don't know.
Yeah, I always get into debates with people and comment about measuring battery life is super tricky just because the dynamic nature of the hardware. And it really depends how, maybe they ran the brightness at 100% at 120 hertz and we're playing video games. And like, if you do that, you'll kill the battery in under 2 hours, no doubt. It really varies. So it's really hard to give an estimate on battery life. That said, I agree. Laptop Studio gets very good battery life. Pro 8 is the one where you throw that 120 hertz on there and all that. Like, the Pro 8 battery life is still not amazing at all. It's fine. Mm-hmm. It's satisfactory, but it's such a thin and light device that it's really hard to get very good battery life out of it.
Yeah, I guess in my 2 weeks of the Laptop Studio, I've just sort of been using it as I've edited some videos. As you know, last week we hosted the podcast on mine and it worked flawlessly, unlike the Book 3, which could not complete that task. Earlier today, I was just sort of messing around. I remembered that the specs do mention that there's a version of Windows 10 Pro that you can get through the commercial channels. So I decided, hey, is it possible to just clean install Windows 10 Home on the consumer version? The answer is yeah. There's a specific set of drivers for it that Windows Update pulls down, or you can even get like the offline installer for Windows 10 drivers through the Microsoft Downloads website. And it works just fine. The only Thing that I noticed that wasn't there on the Windows when you install Windows 10 is that there's no option to control the intensity of the trackpad in settings, because that's a Windows 11 feature. But everything else worked flawlessly. Windows Hello, all of the gyro, everything, like it just worked. You can still feel the trackpad clicking down. You just can't configure how strong or off, essentially. But yeah, like the Slim Pen still connected perfectly and stuff. And you know what? Windows 10 still has tablet mode. So when you pull it forward into studio mode or whatever it's called, it like enables tablet mode. So apps run full screen stuff and the start menu goes full screen, which is actually kind of cool. I kind of miss that in Windows 11. But yeah, like if you are somebody who's been interested in looking in getting a Surface Laptop Studio, but you're not a huge fan of Windows 11, which I know there are some of you out there, you can grab one, install Windows 10, and it will work just fine. No problems at all, really. So give it a go, I think, if you have been holding out.
Yep. And someone's asking Sarah. Sorry, she's asking about, and this is a tougher question. How would you copy your Windows 11 drive to the new drive? I don't really recommend that. And this is why I'm trying to tell people, try to plan this in advance. Like if you're going to get the Pro 8, think in your head, like, I want to get the 128 model or 256, and then I'm going to buy the 1 terabyte drive. And you can do it all when you get the device. So you're not, because if you do this 6 months later and you have everything on your Pro 8, I mean, for me, it's no big deal. A lot of my stuff is already in the cloud. I do this all the time and wipe devices. It's no big deal. But if you have a lot of stuff and you don't want to back it up, you can either back up manually, like copy your folders over to an external drive. That's one option. You could also get third-party software. And I'm trying to think of the name now. It's like Refract or something like that. I forgot the name. I actually have a license for it, and I've used it before. But there's third-party software that lets you copy the entire drive to an external drive. And then what you got to do is you got to use that instead. So you put in the new drive and then you boot to this thing, and then it's going to, I think Reflect. I want to say the name is Reflect. And I forgot the company that makes it. I'll get it after, when Zach starts talking, I'll look it up. But then it's going to copy that entire drive to the new one. And it works. I've done it with the Dell XPS 15 and that upgrade guide. In fact, if you go look up Dell XPS 15 SSD on Windows Central, you should be able to see how I did it. That works. You do run the risk a little bit of like drivers and stuff like that, but it really shouldn't be a problem because you're just swapping the SSD and there really aren't too many drivers involved with it. It can get dicey because of it's technical, right? It's harder, I'm just going to say. If you know what you're doing and you've done it a ton of times, it's actually very easy. But if you're doing this for the first time, you have to you have to buy the software. You have to make sure you have an external drive that's big enough to, you know, if you already have 128 gigs, you need 128 gig.
Yeah, you could, in theory, get an M.2 adapter, plug into the USB-C port, copy your actual drive onto that, and then stick the external SSD into the slot on the Pro 8. But again, you need to get access to an M.2 adapter so you can actually plug in via the USB-C port whilst currently running Windows in the smaller SSD that comes with the Pro to begin with. So yes, it does become a lot more complicated, whereas if you just do it in Dan's method, is you take it out, put it in, reinstall Windows, and then just manually reinstall all of your program stuff. If you're using OneDrive and whatnot, all of your files, you don't really need to worry about them. I haven't worried about file backup in, I want to say, like 8 years, because everything just saves to the cloud for me. It's really nice.
Same. That's why I've kind of stopped doing this method, because I think it's a little overcomplicated, but it exists out there. You can do it. And yeah, you can get an SSD enclosure. I actually use SSD enclosures. They're kind of nice. But like I said, it gets a little bit more technical because then you have to boot to that drive and restore it, but it can be done. But I really recommend, if you plan on doing this for the Pro 8, plan in advance and just do it all in day one. You won't have any of these issues. And that's kind of the easier way to do it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The new hardware is really nice. I've been a big fan of it. I'm still a hardcore Pro 8 user. Although part of it's because with Laptop Studio and all laptops, when I wear a metal watch band, I can't put my wrist on the keyboard next. So I either got to take my watch off or hold it, angle it. With the Surface Pro 8, I don't have that problem. So that's, I think, one reason why I kind of use them.
Nice.
Cool. All right. Well, look forward for some more coverage of that. I still have a guide on the best accessories for Pro 8 coming out, as well as the review of the Kensington Thunderbolt 4 dock for it, which has also been very good, and more. So, Xbox Mini Fridge. They really did it.
They really
Why don't you
did
tell us
it.
about that?
They have confirmed that the Xbox Mini Fridge will arrive in December this year, and pre-orders open October 19th. So that should be Monday? Let me double check that. Tuesday next week. It costs $99, which is quite a surprise to me. I thought it would be much more, maybe $200, $300, but nope, $99. And as I mentioned, it begins shipping at some point in December. It's available in the US and I believe some European countries as well. Yes, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Ireland, Spain, Netherlands, and Poland. So yeah, so that's actually quite a large market rollout for this product, which is, I'm going to call it a Gen 1 product. Because it's their first fridge. So yes, it has an LED on it, similar to the actual Series X. So when it's on and stuff, it has a light on it, which is pretty cool. It also has a USB-C charging port on the front, so you can plug in a phone or something, and it will charge your device through the fridge.
You could also use it on a battery, apparently.
Oh, really? I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it takes AC or DC current.
That's hilarious. The fridge is capable of holding up to 12 cans of any beverage of your choice. So that's good to know. And there's also a sort of mini shelves on the door as well, so you can have maybe additional snacks or something if you would like as well. So that's pretty much all there is to it. It looks like a mini Xbox Series X. Well, but with a fridge on the inside. This is, of course, this grew out of the meme that sort of came about when the Series X was first unveiled. It looks like a kitchen fridge, essentially. And Microsoft have...
And if I recall, that was Matt Brown, our own Matt Brown, that started that meme.
Yeah, he did do the first Photoshop of the Series X in a kitchen, acting as a fridge. So yes, but yeah, then Microsoft sort of, I think this is great when companies do this. You can go as a company, you can either go two ways. You can either ignore all the criticism and pretend it doesn't exist and try to be all positive about your products and whatnot, or you can grab it with two hands and go, all right, let's make the best of this situation. Yes, the Xbox Series X is a weird looking console. It looks like a fridge and that can sit in a kitchen. Let's embrace that. Let's make a fridge based on the Series X design. And they have now done that, and they are shipping a mini version, which is pretty cool. They did make full-size versions, two of them, I think. They sent one to The Rock, was it? I think it was.
I think so.
Yeah, The Rock, and then the other one was sent to a YouTuber. I cannot remember her name.
iJustine.
iJustine, that's right, yeah. So for some reason, them two got the full fridge, the big, large, real fridge. But if you want a mini version, starting next week, you can pre-order for $99, and I think I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I could actually fit one on this desk here if I wanted to.
Yeah, I think mine's going to go in that very corner.
I don't know, like, it's a great price. You gotta give them credit for.
Yeah, $99 is very affordable. I was, like I said, expecting at least $100 more, but no, $99, pretty nice.
It's fun when they come out with little things like this.
This is Microsoft's first kitchen appliance.
And just like typical Microsoft, no Thunderbolt 4 or LTE.
Yeah, how many teraflops does the fridge have?
Huh?
How many teraflops does the fridge have? Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty much everything you need to know about the Series X fridge. We will talk more about it when we have them in hand, which will be in a couple of months.
Up next is Dell and Windows 10. So this was a funny story that got corrected. We didn't run it. We thought about running it, but it was like, that doesn't sound right. There was, a mild controversy yesterday where someone found on Dell's website what looked like it was the XPS 13 9305. What makes that one interesting? That's still the old version, the 16:9 display before the redesign. It's not well publicized, but they still sell that model, and it gets updated. So it's actually running 11th gen Intel. It's been refreshed on the internals, but it has the old design, and the 16:9 is a 16:10 display. And the reason they do that is because the parts for it are cheaper, because 16:9 now is the cheap part. 16:10 is the premium part. Remember, I've always talked about this on the podcast about why we don't see these things, because they're expensive. Like Dell doesn't make displays, so they got to wait till like Sharp or Samsung makes them. and then they're only in small volume, they're more expensive, and so we're starting to see that shift. But because of that, there's a glut of 16:9 displays now. So Dell keeps this one around, and it often hits below $900 for a price, and allows them to hit that which isn't typical for XPS, right? And so what was interesting, if you went to the Dell website and you went to the configuration, you can get the same model with Windows 10 or one with Windows 11, same hardware. The Windows 11 model was like $80 more or something like that. And so a publication wrote like, oh my God, are we starting to see like a Windows 11 tax? Because Windows 11 is supposed to be a free upgrade. So the idea is OEM shouldn't be charging you more for a Windows 11 version of that device, which is true. And so that's the story they went with. And they're like, oh, these companies trying to levy a Windows 11 tax. And that's what the quote was. And that sounded fishy to me, because either that could have been an error on Dell's part or something. Those configurators are kind of weird sometimes what they show. So we held back and waited for Dell to comment on it. Dell did finally respond. It turns out, no, it's reversed. The Windows 11 laptop is priced at what it's supposed to be. The Windows 10 one is being discounted at a heavier rate. And the reason they're doing that is because they want to get rid of their Windows 10 stock, which kind of makes sense, because they can't, don't forget, these things are packaged and sealed, right? They can't just open up the packaging, go in and reflash it. They could, but could you imagine being that person? You have a pallet, like just 1,000 laptops, go reflash them. So they're not going to do that, but they want to get rid of the Windows 10 stock, because if you're Dell, selling a new Windows 11 laptop is the thing to do for the holiday season, right? And like I said, these are 11th gen processors. These are internally updated, like modern. So, and this is actually kind of cool if you think about it, because you can actually buy the Windows 10 version and you're saving technically $150, because the other one's kind of discounted too, right? So it's like a $150 difference. Get that, and of course it's going to get Windows 11. It qualifies for Windows 11, because every laptop being sold right now qualifies for Windows 11. And so you can just go and get Windows 11 on it for free, but also, so this thing came down to like, I think it was like $730 or $750. And it was like a 11th gen Core i5 full HD display. Like, it's actually, and you're getting the XPS build quality. That's a really good price for what, years ago, 2 years ago, that was the Hallmark Gem Windows 10 laptop.
Yeah.
Now you can just get it for like $750 and just throw Windows 11 on it if you want. You don't have to. I guess all this raises a thing. We may see more of this, right? I don't see why, if that's Dell's doing, why HP and Lenovo also may not have extra stock as well. And this is why we saw, even Microsoft was running out of stock out of certain devices, right, early. Because companies were trying to levy this stuff so they don't have a glut. But it may be something worth looking out for. If you are looking for a new laptop this season, you may want to start looking at the Windows 10 ones and see if they're getting bigger discounts, because you could probably save yourself some money there. I think it's just a good shopping tip there. But this is a two-parter, right? You could maybe get a discounted Windows 10 laptop. At the same time, no, there does not appear to be a Windows 11 tax that OEMs are putting on new devices. If you do see that, let us know. We'll contact the company, get an answer. I don't think you'll see that, though, as an issue. So, Cool. You want to talk about Surface and Surface Duo?
Yeah, well, basically, essentially, it's almost Surface Duo 2 time. Next week it launches on Thursday, so we will be talking about our thoughts and opinions on it on the Friday episode. I'm getting one in. I have pre-ordered mine. Microsoft has now charged my card for it, so they have taken my money. Nice. I officially own a Duo 2. I just now have to wait for it to show up at my door. And that's very exciting. We've seen in America some hands-ons with the hardware now, because you can sort of walk into Best Buy and stuff to sort of see it and feel it and whatnot. A few people have done videos just sort of showing off the hardware and walking through the software. Things look mostly good. The camera performance looks very fast. Like the biggest issue out of the first Duo is when you take a picture, like it takes 10 years to actually take the photo. Whereas on Duo 2, you press the button and it snaps the photo. as you would expect, as is what most other phones do. So that's a huge improvement for me. Some of the videos have shown some software quirks still. It is a little bit worrying, but you've got to remember these are still running pre-release OS builds. The day one update doesn't roll out until, I guess, well, day one will be the 21st of October, which I'm assuming will include a whole bunch of fixes and stuff to polish it up for release. And once we get it in hand and begin testing, we'll talk about this on next Friday's episode, of course, because we'll have been using it for a day or more at that point. We will be able to talk about the software side, because that's the big question, right? Lots of people have been asking us, because we've had hands-on with the hardware when you did your briefings back earlier this month, and I was able to head to the Microsoft Experience Store in London to sort of have a go over there as well the day after. The hardware is phenomenal, right? It feels great. It looks great. The hinge is much better. The screens are great. The 90 hertz is great. All of that good stuff. But lots of people were asking us about the software, and we couldn't really comment because we didn't have enough time to really use the device software. Like, we got to feel the hardware. We got to tap around in the OS for X amount of minutes, but we weren't really using the device in that way. So next week will be really where we talk about the software and how it's feeling. And it's a big part of the Duo, right? The Duo one's biggest failing was the software being buggy. Hopefully, Microsoft has solved that with the Duo 2 and Android 11, but we will have to wait and see. But yeah, I am very excited. I pre-ordered the 128 gig because I have the 256 Duo, and I checked before I pre-ordered. I was like, I'm only using like 60 gigabytes on this device.
Yeah.
So I really don't need 256 or 512. Whoever pre-ordered 512, good on you, because that's real commitment.
It is. Yeah, I'm curious of what people do, because it's like, I get, like, before I take a flight, I'll download some Spotify. But what's that going to be? Maybe a gig?
Yeah.
Like, in photos between, Google's backup situation, which, mine's running out of space. I only got 95% left. It keeps reminding me. But you also have OneDrive, backing up photos. You don't need to keep stuff on the device itself.
Yeah. I guess if you play games... that's when you sort of need more storage, but I'm not a mobile gamer. I don't think I have any games installed on my phone right now. So yeah,
I mean, I still don't know like how you can fill up even with games. And we should mention with Duo 2 there are 3 major games, Gameloft games.
That's right.
Dungeon Hunter, what's the race?
Don't ask me.
Hold on, I'll actually give me 2 seconds.
I'll talk about something else. So the other thing, I guess, is worth mentioning. Obviously, white and black models. I ordered the black one personally, though I am reconsidering because I'm scared of the fingerprints. The black one will certainly show those fingerprints way more than the white one does. The Duo one I've been using for a year in white.
You got to get the pen cover.
Got to get the pen cover. That doesn't come out until November 15th, though, so that's annoying.
Yeah, I should have. Yeah, I got to ask Microsoft to make sure it's still on track. So the games are Asphalt 9 Legends, Modern Combat 5, and Dungeon Hunter 5. So what's cool about these are the first, to our knowledge, official games that you play locally, not cloud storage, locally, that are optimized for Surface Duo 2. That is, they actually use the bottom half of the display for in-game content. So I'm looking at Asphalt 9, and it actually, on top, the main screen, you're going to have the game you're racing. The bottom half is the map, which is cool, with the on-screen controls. Then I guess Dungeon Hunter, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to see the main gameplay, and on the bottom, you're going to see the map of the dungeons. And Modern Combat 5 looks like something with configuring your soldier or whatever it is. But these is a partnership with Gameloft, and I know, at least I heard one of these will be preloaded with, and then there'll be like links to download the other ones if you want. Of course, you could uninstall them, I imagine. But this is the first of, and I'm sure that's the deal, right? Games are like, yeah, we'll optimize our games. Could you pre-install one of them? And sure enough, that's what's happening. So these are going to be, and that's cool because that's in addition to xCloud. If you have the Game Pass, there were 50 games with on-screen controls for Surface Duo. Now there's somewhere around 100, and they're going to keep adding more and more of those. So these are games that you would stream to the Duo, but it has the on-screen controls for it. And I think this is a really interesting angle because they really are sort of leaning into the Xbox entertainment thing for Surface Duo 2, which they didn't do for the last one, right? It
Well,
was just like, oh,
this
kind
is
of like,
this falls into the whole it's a phone thing. Like I said this like the first Surface Duo that they were like it's a Surface. When you would ask them about the phone, they'd say it's a Surface, which is them essentially getting around the is it a phone question. Duo 2, they are very open about it being a phone. And not only just a phone, but a fun phone. You know, it has 5G, Xbox Game Pass preloaded, the Game Loft stuff. They want people to look at this as a fun, quirky device, not just a device for productivity. And they can do that now because it has a good camera and it has 5G and all of that other stuff that make a flagship phone a flagship phone. The reason they did the Duo 1, of course, is because it was sort of lacking in the hardware department. Beautiful device, but outside of that, actually using the thing, kind of complicated, out of date, camera was terrible. So it didn't really make sense to try and market that to a more mainstream audience, whereas the Duo 2, it does. So that's what we're seeing here with the whole gaming push and the more fun side of things, rather than just it about being productivity only 100,000% of the time. Yes, it does do productivity well, but you can also play some games on it and listen to music and chat with your friends if you want to.
yeah, and it feels like a more robust version with Duo 2. So you got the gaming angle, of course. You have the Microsoft 365 angle. You got music with Spotify. It's optimized. And we've always talked about the dual screen support for apps, but there's only been like some core ones you really needed. And you've always kind of had that, right? Kindle. Like, if it didn't have Kindle support, it'd be like, oh, that's just a waste. But it does. It's always had the Kindle support. And Spotify is on there too. And now you got games, and you got a lot of Microsoft's own software that spans and all this. The new feature with version 2 is you can choose which apps you want to auto span when you open them. So if you always have Outlook auto spanning and use it that way, you can go into the settings, you just hit a little pill box, and next time you open Outlook, it always double open. And that's gonna be great for Kindle and whatever app you want to do. Now, I should mention, I do believe that should be coming to Surface Duo 1 too. Surface Duo 1 as well. I know people are still asking about Android 11. When we asked Microsoft in New York, the latest was it's coming before the end of the year. I know that's not the answer everybody wants to hear, but they are definitely going to deliver it. We've talked about this in the past. Going to Android 11 is a bigger deal because they have to undo a lot of the stuff that they did for Windows 10. Android 11, from what I'm gathering, does do a lot for dual screen devices in terms of performance and optimizations. We'll, of course, see it for the Duo 2 review. So, if you don't believe me, obviously, and you shouldn't, wait for the review and wait till we have to say. But I am hearing that, there are serious advancements in Android 11 that makes the dual screen experience more fluid and the performance better and the gestures. They also have the new digitizer in Duo 2, so touch is supposed to be better. Zach has tried the haptics. He says the haptics are even better. We need to do the review, right? So typing, is typing going to be better? From what I seen, from when I used it, for me, a lot of this just comes down to the faster processor and the more RAM, along with the Android 11 improvements. I think those three things alone is going to greatly improve the usability experience in terms of fluidity, moving things around the screen, how, like right now, like on Duo 2, when you drag up the app launcher, it now follows your finger. There's all these little minute things that they changed in the UI that should improve that usability experience. So I'm hopeful. I think it's going to be a big deal in terms of the way it feels versus the first version. But the first version is definitely not being left out. It's going to get Android 11. A lot of the software stuff that's coming to Duo 2 that can be brought to Duo 1 will happen. Some of what's in Duo 2 is dependent on the hardware and the sensor, so some things won't happen. But I think they're not leaving them in the dark. Now, I should mention Duo 2 gets 3 years of updates. That's security and OS updates, just like Duo 1 had. And it should be on a faster track. Microsoft is more confident that they're going to be able to deliver Android 12 much more quickly than Android 11. Part of that's going to be experience. Part of that's just the fact that these new versions of Android are increasingly built around the concept of a dual screen or foldable device, making it easier for them to do that. As to why they don't do more than 3 years, this is kind of a controversial thing with Android. Everybody's like, oh, they should match Apple. Yeah, they should match Apple. And I don't disagree. They can't because the issue is Qualcomm, as Zach said. Qualcomm makes drivers for these devices base and matches them up to Android and optimization. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes there. And currently, Qualcomm has been convinced to go to 3 years. But that's why the new Pixel 6 is supposed to get like 5 years. So you get, the Pixel 6 doesn't use Qualcomm.
Mm-hmm.
It uses the new Google chip that they made. So of course they can offer longer support. It's a lot easier. They're doing the same thing that Apple's done. So this is an issue where the industry needs to lean on Qualcomm. And to be fair to Qualcomm, they have to manage a lot of devices, right? They don't just have one processor, they have a bunch of them. And there's diminishing returns in terms of doing these updates. But that's the holdup. That's why Microsoft can't go, we're going to do 5 years of updates. Yeah. They can't because they don't get the drivers from Qualcomm for the 888 for 5 years. So that's a really important caveat I think people need to know about.
Yes. So yes, next week will be that will be the big week where we talk about Duo 2. But this week is us sort of being excited. It's like the night before Christmas Eve.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm actually, so, I got my Duo 1 here in front of me. I've been using the Z Flip, been pretty open about that. Been using TCL and Realme as well, because they're just really good phones. But when I do pick up the Duo and start using it again, I still love I can't wait to go back to dual screen because for me, this really does serve as a mini laptop. I'll be on the couch, I'll be out in the store, and I need to do something. I can actually I feel like real work on this and manage things. What I'm bothered by when I use Duo 1 now, especially compared to the Flip and the Realme and TCL phones, is the performance. Everything is slow on it. When I open apps, it's slow. It's 60 hertz display versus the new 90 hertz display. The processor is slow. It doesn't have enough RAM. So it's really, and then the digitizer, all that is what's really impacting my love now of the Duo 1. But what makes me happy is all that is also fixed in Duo 2. 888 is a serious processor. 5G is great. More RAM, two more gigs of RAM is nice. Of course, the cameras, which are going to be really good. The build quality is improved, which is kind of weird because it's already got very good build quality. The robustness, it even has some mild water protection with it. We shouldn't have snapping C ports anymore. We'll see, of course. But Microsoft was very well aware of that. Worked on the chassis and improving it. The chassis itself is more robust and sturdy, and it feels better in the hands. And as Zach couldn't even confirm, remarkably, the hinge feels even better now. And it's weird to say, but it's true. So I'm very hopeful about this. Plus, we get the glance bar, which is going to be so rad. I think it's just going to be super cool to use. So I'm very hopeful about it. So I am going into this optimistic, but we'll see. I'll be talking to other reviewers as well. I'm sure we'll see what the thought is on this stuff. So, all right, that's the Duo. What do we got next? Oh, thing of the week. Do you have a thing of the week?
Yeah, I do have a thing of the week, actually. I think maybe, did I talk about this last time? I don't think I did. I hope I didn't.
No, I don't think we did.
Okay, yeah. So my thing of the week, and it's not a new show, don't get me wrong, but I only really just sort of caught on to it in the last few weeks. Ted Lasso on Apple TV Plus.
Oh,
amazing.
I haven't watched it.
It's amazing.
I have Apple. Is it? I'm so sick. It's like Titanic when it came out. Have you seen Titanic? I've seen Titanic. It's like I'm so sick of hearing good things about it.
Yeah.
But then I found out that the producer of that show made Scrubs.
Oh, I did not know that. Oh wow!
And I love Scrubs. So no, sorry.
Ted Lasso is great. It's a sort of feel-good comedy drama about an American football coach who gets hired to coach an English football team or soccer team to him. So he doesn't really know much about the sport, and it's all about him having to do that. And there's lots of twists and turns. There's a lot happens, and things get revealed, and people's intentions aren't always so pure, but it's a feel good show. So it's not like death and whatnot. It's a feel good show. So you watch it, you feel for all the characters, you connect with all the characters, and you just want everybody to just sort of be great. And It's really good. I really enjoyed it. It's on season 2 just wrapped. Just finished airing on Apple TV Plus. Apple TV do the thing where they do one episode a week, which kind of annoying in this day and age, but that's how they do it. Yeah, I couldn't recommend it enough. It is great. And if you're not a fan of football or soccer, I'm not the biggest fan of soccer. Don't worry, because although the show is based around that entire sport and is sort of why all these characters are together, and he's coaching a football team, you get to know all the characters on the team, or a number of them anyway. The amount of time they spend on actual football is very small. You don't really need to know much about it because the coach doesn't either, and they sort of play into that. So that's great. It is a show for everybody, and I couldn't recommend it enough.
That's good. Yeah. I like I said, it's won so many awards, and everybody keeps talking about it.
It's great.
It's almost like frustrating.
It's good. It's good because it's a comedy drama, so it's funny and it's lighthearted and it's almost sometimes childish, but to like an exaggerated degree. But then other times there are some real moments, some like emotional, heartfelt, raw adult moments. Where people are, they break down, they're human, they have mental issues and stuff, and they can't always just get through the day. And it really does sort of find that nice balance between being a hilarious show with almost childlike comedy, but then paired with adult sort of real life things that adults have to deal with.
That's Scrubs.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
Yeah, Scrubs did that balance very well. That's why everybody loved that show so much. It was super funny. It was goofy. It had running jokes and gags throughout the seasons. Awesome characters that would come on and guest. But then there was always this like moment where it got really serious, and it really pulled at the heartstrings. You'd be like, oh,
that's what this does as well.
What's going on here? So when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, now I kind of have to watch it.
It's
so
great.
That is, there's a lot on Apple TV.
My thing for next week is the morning show. It's also very good.
Oh boy. All right. There's almost too much stuff to watch these days.
Yeah, there it
so
is.
I guess I'll have 2 recommendations. Well, one is Dark Side of the Ring, which is on Hulu. I don't know how you watch it if you're not in UK, but I think it's on YouTube and it's on Vice if you have access to Vice. This is about the pro wrestling. Now, I went through a phase of pro wrestling in 1984 to like 1987. Also known as probably the best years ever of pro wrestling, I should have mentioned. It's when it went big with Hulk Hogan and everything. But I never really got into it after that. Like I always found it just goofy. The storylines, it just wasn't for me. I just outgrew it and stuff like that. But I always kind of respected it as a, especially as like movies like The Wrestler came out, and we learned more about the athletes behind it and what work goes into it. And it's just like it's a crazy industry. So this is in its 3rd season now, and it's a behind the scenes, but they focus on a lot of like not the main. There's a couple that focus on the main wrestlers, Randy Macho Man Savage there, and the Ultimate Warrior, are there. But a lot of it are minor players, and people in the background, people in other promotions, and going back years into the 70s and stuff like that. And it's the craziest storytelling I've ever heard. It's like I said, you don't need to care about wrestling to get into it because it's just good drama. It's just people telling amazing stories. And you're just like, what? Like, how did this actually happen? Some of it's sad, some of it's funny, some of it's tragic. And what's really nice is they do a very good job of like basically humanizing everyone. They don't really make people out to be completely evil and all this. And they show the other side, and they talk to a lot of the people who are affected by, some of the deaths involved and stuff like that. And it's like, it gives you a newfound respect for the industry. Also like, wow, that's a whole thing. So that's Dark Side of the Ring. And apparently it got so popular, they did Dark Side of the NFL and Dark Side of the 90s, which I haven't watched yet. So I want to watch Dark Side of the 90s though. The other thing is Squid Game, which is another show that if you're on social networks, people just can't stop talking about. So we finally watched it, and I was just like, not into it. It's not the violence. The violence I thought was hilarious, which just show you how jaded I am. But Korean violence in Korean movies and Japanese movies, to me, it's almost cartoonish. It's not really. It doesn't really feel too serious. Whereas if I want to watch serious horror, you go French. Go French. Look up the top 20 French horror films, like Martyrs. You'll be scarred for life. Like those movies will just be like you're going to leave and you just like feel dirty and just like I need a therapist. Like it's really psychologically just disturbing.
Jesus.
Whereas the Korean and Japanese stuff is just like CGI blood, and I know
Yeah.
it's violent, but I don't believe it. Like I don't, and
Yeah.
that's how I felt. I thought people were getting killed on the show. I was like, LOL, didn't like you anyway. I didn't like the show though because one, it felt very derivative. There's been so many of the, here's the game show. Oh my God, they're killing
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Goes back to the Running Man, right? And of course, there's Hunger Games. Like there's a ton of these things. I felt it was dragged out too long. It was super predictable. I knew exactly. I'd be like, my girlfriend got so mad at me because I'd be like predicting stuff episodes in advance. Like, watch these two people. She's gonna get betrayed, and she's gonna kill that other guy, or they're gonna get killed at the same time, and she's gonna be laughing while they do it, and all this. And like, sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And then there were just dumb things that, as a tech nerd, I got mad at. It was like, there's a cop, and he has an iPhone. Of course, because only good people can have iPhones. That's the written rule, right? Apparently, yeah. But like on the first day, his iPhone has like 50% battery life, and like he's there for like 3 or 4 days on this island that I assume doesn't have good reception. He's doing video and documenting, and the battery lasts. Are you kidding me? I know it's a dumb thing to like complain over, but I just thought it was hilarious. But the show was just like, I just wasn't into it. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I thought the actors were not the actors. The actors were great. The characters were kind of dumb. And even the main character, I was just like, at the end of the show, I'm like, you know what, sir? You're still the world's worst father. Like, no redemption. You're just a terrible person who's just terrible. I think, and this is going to get controversial, I think Americans are sort of like enthralled with Squid Game because we as a culture typically don't go watch independent and what's called foreign. A lot of people don't like to use that word foreign because it makes it sound like alien. International. We don't like to watch a lot of international content. So that one thing that comes around that's international, we watch, we kind of like, we very much like to pat ourselves on the back and be like, look at us. I watched something with subtitles.
Yeah.
Aren't I sophisticated? And like that's a thing here in America because we are very much a closed-knit island. A lot of people don't leave ever. And so I think there's a lot of this, like I watch something that's foreign and exotic. And it's just like, it really wasn't that good. But if you enjoyed it, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
On that foreign subject, Into the Night, which we've talked about before, that show's really weird because it's like it's a whole bunch of different like countries and languages coming together, and there's not really one language that's the main language for the show. Like there's people who just talk different languages, and you'll be listening in your own language at one point, and then there'll be subtitles for all the other people. Or if you're listening into, there's like Netflix do dubs if you don't want to read the subtitles, then they're dubbing through, of course. But if you actually listen to it properly with the subtitles, you'll be listening to someone in English, and then somebody in French, and then somebody in German, and it's just that the whole time it's just them like crossing over languages. I think that's really cool for the show.
It was funny though because my best friend was like, "Oh, I watched a TikTok," which was hilarious because I'm like, "Since when do you watch TikToks?" Because he's like in his 40s, and he's like, and this girl was talking about how the subtitles for Squid Game weren't as accurate as the dubbing. And there's like these little nuances. Like this girl was like, I'm not very smart, but this and that. And what they really mean was this. And I just want to be like, and so he said that and I finished watching it. I'm like, the show's not deep. This isn't like reading Kafka. There was no multiple readings into the text. The little nuance he told me about had no impact whatsoever on my view of the show or what the characters or anything like that. So I'm not buying into that the subtitles aren't as accurate because it's like this isn't a deep show to try to comprehend or understand. So, but if people are watching it, it's good. Maybe, and I'm always happy when Americans do get exposed to other things. One thing it's funny, I was explaining to my girlfriend. She's like, because everybody's in debt on this show, right? That's why they get picked. And she's like, wow, this was in America. And I'm like, well, and I explained to her, like, well, in Korea and in some Asian countries, it's still considered to be dishonorable to have debt.
Yeah.
And that's a weird concept for Americans because we basically
everyone's
start
in
off
debt. Yeah.
like, your high school, here's a credit card, put your entire college onto a credit card, and then spend the rest of your life paying it off. Uh, so that is a different concept. So it's funny to see like in Korea, people are like so shamed, like I owe money, I'm so, how dare you? In America, it's just like that's just normal. So there are those interesting differences that I'm always encouraged for people to learn about. But yeah, that wasn't a great show. I'm not really looking forward to season 2, which
Which
was
will
just
definitely
like,
happen.
oh, the way they ended it was just like, season 2, come on, setting it up perfectly. Like, you're going to give us a season 2, right? Because
Well, I tell you, I commend you for watching all of it and not just bowing out.
it's one of those things. It's just like you just want to see it through. It is a watchable show, but I wasn't like your recommendation of Into the Night is way more binge worthy.
Into Night's amazing.
Yeah, like that you totally want to watch the next episode. This one I'm like,
Yeah.
oh come on, more people dying. LOL. Anywho, I guess that does it for this podcast.
Yes.
So, we'll be back next week. Next week should be a very exciting week. I'll just say Razer has RazerCon going on, which is kind of interesting. They got a bunch of stuff that's going to be coming. I think it's going to be a very fun week if you're into computers. Of course, Surface Duo 2 is coming on the 21st on Thursday. I'm sure there'll be lots of hands-on reviews and back.
Apple has an event next week, right? They do their Mac stuff next week.
Apple has an event on Monday. You're right. I believe they're announcing MacBook Pro 16-inch. And yeah, it's going to have the new M1X processor. That's the rumor. It's going to be even faster. This is going to be an interesting device. They're bringing back apparently a lot of the ports, not just like an SD card slot. Apparently HDMI. That's too far.
Yeah,
come on.
That's weird.
No one needs a full HDMI. An HP EliteBook deserves an HDMI port, not an Apple. But supposedly they're bringing back HDMI and no Type A though, but SD card and MagSafe. I think these are going to be very impressive laptops. I think it's going to do very well for the Apple audience. I think if you still want a touchscreen, or you want an ink, or you want a device that transforms into different postures, I don't think this device is going to do anything for you. And for me, that's still the biggest selling point with Windows devices. But if you just need a powerful, old school clamshell laptop from 2015 with an ARM processor, well, I think Apple is going to be able to sell you something Monday. So we'll have a reaction for that too next week. Also, the Pixel 6 is supposed to be announced next week as well on Tuesday.
It's a really busy week.
Yeah, next week. A really busy week. So get your money set aside to see which company gets your cash, and we'll cover it all next week. As always, we do this 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on our YouTube channel, Windows Central, and we are doing a live chat right now. We'll stick around, do some Q&A with the audience, so you can feel free to ask us questions there. Follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, and Zach at ZACBOWDEN. And as always, we thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Awesome.
Sorry, Zach, I didn't make this a short show.
It's okay. All right, if you have any questions, now is the time to ask them. We'll hang around for 10 or so minutes to answer them, and then we will head off for the night.
Apple is now cheaper than Windows when you consider money you're paying for horsepower, but that's not it. That's not the equation. The equation is you're buying the Surface Laptop Studio, for instance, because of what it can do. And I've made that very clear in the review. If you don't need the touchscreen, if you don't need inking, you don't need it to go into studio mode, you do not need the Laptop Studio. But for a lot of people, for artists, creatives, that device does something no Apple device could do. You would maybe need a MacBook Pro and then have to go buy an iPad Pro and carry around 2 devices to do that.
I guess you could make a more fair comparison between the Surface Laptop and, say, a MacBook Air. In which case, I guess maybe you're right. The price to performance ratio does favor the MacBook Air. Because you can get what? You can get a MacBook Air for $999?
And they start like $1,000, I think.
Yeah, which is pretty for the price, for the performance. Is
there's
not
no
terrible.
Doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt. But like I said, this performance thing
they both perform great. Is the sort of main takeaway. That like you're not going to notice just using these devices that one is infinitely better than the other, because they're not. The benchmarking is a great way to see the potential or the raw power of each chip, but it's not really a good it doesn't really give you a good example of how these devices actually feel to use, because 99% of the time you're not maxing these chips at all, and for the most part the max of each chip can totally handle your workflow, most people's workflow in their day-to-day. So you get most of these things will be doing these things. Most of these devices and most of the people using these devices won't notice many differences between using an M1 or an Intel chip, because no one's max. Most people don't max these chips. Right. Doesn't matter.
I was going to say, it's like, I get the performance argument, and I post benchmarks for that reason. But you have to understand, a lot of people using like a Surface Pro 8 they're not going to complain it's a slow device. Like the OS experience of launching apps, running programs, it's not slow, it's not sluggish, it's very fast and zippy. And so then this is always kind of the issue with the iPad Pros, which is like, oh my God, they're so powerful. And yet everybody knows they're not actually using the power of that CPU for anything. Like you're launching like Bejeweled, I that's not to take away from what Apple's done. I think it's very important. I just, again, will keep reiterating that. And it's the same thing with AMD. Buying a laptop or a PC or any kind of electronic device is not always about the max performance. It really depends on what your job is. If your job is like, well, listen, Dan, I render 4K video 8 hours a day as a videographer. That's all I do. Okay, for you, the CPU, GPU thing totally matters. If you're buying these devices because you like to edit photos, you're doing Excel, you're doing office productivity, you're doing social networks, Microsoft Teams, you're doing productivity kind of things, this argument falls flat because none of these devices are going to suddenly feel slow when doing this stuff. So there's a certain market for these kind of things.
Any more info on how exactly the Duo 2 pen covers clipped on allow charging? Technically, that is. I don't think Microsoft has given any more information. My guess is that what it does is it reroutes wherever the power is for the wireless charging to a position on the device where it makes sense to stick a pen. If, say, like that the coil was up in this corner because that's the only way they could get it exposed on the surface, you can't really stick a pen up there. Like, where's it going to attach? So you put the cover on, and the cover then reroutes that power, carries it to here, and then you stick the pen on there, and that makes more sense. I assume that's what's happening.
Yeah, it reminds me very much of the old school fans might remember the Lumia 925.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Lumia 925 didn't have wireless charging, but it did. So remember when you bought the 925, it didn't have Qi wireless, but you could buy the clip-on cover for it, which then gave you Qi wireless.
Yeah,
and it was the same thing. There's part of the system is in the device, and then the other half of the system is in the shell. You clip on, and it would contact and allow it to happen. They're doing the same thing here, except instead of on the back for Qi wireless, they put them to the front for the pen recharging, and so that's what's happening.
When you tested the Duo 2, was it weird to use it all the way forward because of the camera bump? No, not really. In fact, it actually feels more satisfying because there's actually magnets there now that like suck it to the camera bump, and it feels really good to actually use in that way. I thought it was great. I had no issues at all.
Yeah, I'll make a prediction during the reviews next week. People will mention it, of course, but I think the consensus will be it's no big deal. Yeah. I don't think it's going to.
I doubt any reviewer will be like, "Oh, I cannot. It's unusable. Don't buy it because it doesn't lay flat on itself." I think that'd be ridiculous. Considering that the whole point is there's dual screens, the fact that it's like that when you're in single screen, I think is a non-issue.
Yeah. Could you both share your thoughts regarding the rounded corners on the Surface Laptop Studio? Detail, but what an awful miss between Windows and Surface, right? So, yeah. So for those who don't know, Laptop Studio, just like Laptop Go, the display corners are technically rounded, and I think it looks nice actually.
It does look nice. They are very rounded though. They're more rounded than the Laptop Go, which has a very subtle curve. Yeah. This one's like it's they're round.
What's interesting is it matches exactly the curves of the device itself.
Yeah, it does.
the corners of the device, if we look top down, the external corners are exactly the same ratio or radial. I don't know what we call it. The issue is the screen. The OS doesn't respect that.
Mm-hmm.
So the OS doesn't curve to the display, so you can move your cursor to like a blank spot in some corners. It's no big deal. Like your cursor really goes up there to do anything.
Right. Yeah,
and I don't know how they.
At most for me, it's depending on the app. If it's a classic Win32 app, which places like an icon in the top left corner of the window, and you full screen it. Sometimes, depending on the shape of the icon, a tiny bit of it can be cut off by the rounded corner. But otherwise, it doesn't. There's no functional problem it provides. The close button, the maximize button, it looks perfectly fine. And then only when you go to highlight it do you notice the rounded corner there and stuff. So, it's fine.
I found an SQ1 Pro X on eBay for $5.99. Do you guys think it's a good purchase considering it's an SQ1? Yeah. So don't get hooked up on the SQ1, SQ2 thing. Just really, you're not going to notice that difference. For $5.99, I mean, just be aware that there's probably a new Pro X Gen 3 coming out next year, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's spring, might be fall. But if you're looking for like a secondary tablet device, dude, I love the Pro X. I still use it all the time. Like, it's great.
Zach, I think you have the same preferences for high-resolution screens running at above 100% scale factor for sharper fonts. With the lowest Laptop Studio resolution, Book versus Pro, Book versus Laptop Studio, is it still sharp? It is still sharp, you're right, but you're also right in that it doesn't run at the same scaling factor as the Pro or the Book. The Pro or the Book run at 200% as of the desktop Surface Studio, which I think Windows looks best at 200%. Fonts look amazing, icons look amazing. I think it looks great. Surface Laptop Studio, just like the Surface Laptop, runs at 150% scaling, which on Windows 11 is much better than it was on Windows 10. 150% on Windows 10 wasn't my favorite. On Windows 11, they've done a lot of work to improve on 150% scaling. But you are, if you were to put, as I have the Pro 8 side by side with the Laptop Studio. Yes, the Pro 8's display does look better, in my opinion. It just, the fonts look a bit nicer, everything's a little bit sharper, and it does look nicer. However, if you're not doing that comparison side by side, I use the Laptop Studio primarily at this point. I'm not sitting there thinking, oh, I wish this screen was more sharp. I wish this was the Pro 8 screen, because it is fine. Like, again, sure, you can make the comparison, and yes, the Pro 8 is better. When I look at the Pro 8 screen, I go, oh, wow, this is amazing. But the rest of the Surface Laptop Studio, the keyboard, the trackpad and stuff, kind of makes using this product just better in general anyway, even though the screen is slightly less sharp. I don't find myself wishing or wanting that, because I'm just having a great time using the device as a whole. So,
is Microsoft cooking secretly a powerful ARM processor like Apple M1, or are they completely relying on Qualcomm? So there was a rumor that they're working with AMD for an ARM chip. I'm sure they have explorations into backup.
Microsoft has labs where they work on chips, their own chip stuff. The question, of course, is will they ever ship that in a consumer product? Because they do build chips for servers. I believe that's a known thing. But yeah, the question is, will they ever build something for a consumer grade laptop or tablet or whatever? And the answer is we don't know. They are most certainly exploring that sort of thing. And I think the best way to think of it is, if their partners cannot keep up with what they need, then they will go their own way and build it themselves. But only if that happens. If Qualcomm cannot deliver, or if AMD or Intel cannot deliver the sort of tech or performance that they are looking for in a product that they're trying to build, then they will have no choice but to go their own route. But as long as they've got a partner to partner with to build the thing that they want to build, I don't think that will happen.
Yeah, I think Zach kind of nailed it. But I don't think there's a secret chip. And even if there is a secret chip, the idea that they come out of the gates day one beating the M1 chip,
right,
ludicrous. But I will say, and I said it last time in the podcast, Qualcomm bought Nuvia. Nuvia are the ex-Apple engineers who made the chip designs that led to M1. They now work for Qualcomm. And they've come out publicly and said, oh, that M1, we can beat it. So it's going to take a couple of years because it's designing a chip, not making a new computer. But they believe they can absolutely beat Apple long-term at this game. And they're probably right. But again, this is where my analyst background kind of comes into it. versus consumer. A lot of you guys are like, what's in the next 6 months? Oh my God, they don't have a new Pro X. It's bombed. Microsoft's done with ARM. They're terrible. They need to stop. Where I'm thinking 3-5 years out at least. And when you take that long view, it's very good for ARM and Microsoft and Windows. If all you guys are doing is looking at the next quarter and quarter to quarter, and what device Apple announces Monday, and that's it, that short-term analysis really belies how complex this industry is. And you really need to start thinking about long-term. It might not make you happy, if you really want, like, I want an M1 processor like in a Windows device in spring. Yeah, you're going to be disappointed. Life's full of it. But do I think Apple has a lead that can never be surmounted? And oh my God, it's going to be the year 2023. 90% of laptops are now Apple. And Zach and I are on some second-rate blog talking about Windows, and everybody's been, no, that's not going to happen. That's absolutely not going to happen. So I know people love drama with this stuff. I think you need to take a step back. It's a great time for computing now. It's going to be very exciting to watch.
Are you going to do a hands-on review of the Surface Go 3?
So I'm halfway done with that review. I was actually waiting. One of our guys that does the Kale, he does a lot of the benchmark graphs for me and stuff. I was on vacation this week, and I got pulled in different directions. So I'm halfway done. So look for that review. Hopefully it should be early next week, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. It's not a big review. That processor is, if you have a Surface Go 2 Core M3, there's no need to get the Core i3 model. It's a very, very, very minor. And that's one reason I haven't really done much around it is it's just not a very exciting update. But I'll get benchmarks, some thoughts on it, all that kind of stuff. It's a cute device. I mean, it runs well, but yeah.
Any news on the dynamic refresh rate for Surface Pro 8? I would not expect that anytime soon, based on how, we asked Microsoft a bunch of times, and they were very defensive over whether or not that was even a thing. So, yeah, we don't know when that's going to come, and I would not expect it this year.
Well, you guys have a Duo 2 review article. Can't say yes, no. Could just say that historically we've reviewed every Surface device, including the original Surface Duo. So.
Is taking photos on Duo 2 going to be difficult now that we have to hold and expose both screens and hand photography goes out of scope? Not really, because you could just hold it. It's like
actually
this.
Easier.
Yeah, it's easier. And not only that, so if you haven't, do I have it in here? I don't think I do. I don't think I do. If you've ever held an actual camera, DSLR or any sort of professional camera, you will notice that it's not like a thin thing. There's a chunk to sort of hold onto, so you can grab onto it like that. The Duo 2, if you hold it like this, you have this whole front area now, which you can hold like this, and it's sort of like I don't want to make the comparison to a gun, but like if you hold a gun, and then you can shoot like that, and it's way more comfortable to hold, and it feels great, and it's more sturdy. You're not going to drop it. You've got a larger surface area to grip onto. The ergonomics make more sense this way. So yeah, I think this is going to be a much more comfortable device to take photos with. People are worried that it's going to look like you're holding a tablet. Don't hold them with both screens open. Just do that, and you've got the problem solved. You can still see everything. You take the photo, done.
Plus, they're actually making use of that second screen. That second screen, the left side, is now where the photo you took appears. So you're going to have a live view on the right side, and then you're going to have the photo you just took. So you get an immediate full screen view of that photo. If you think about how you do photos right now, that's really interesting, because I do this all the time, even on the iPhone. You take a photo, and then what do? You immediately move your thumb, and you hit that little circle with the photo. Boom. Bring up the photo. Is it focused? Colors, angle, looks good. All right, swipe back, go redo the photo. So if you think about that movement versus now on Duo 2, where you're going to immediately be able to review the full screen photo on the left-hand side, take the photo on the right, it actually, that flow, way more interesting. And it is going to be faster, because right now the problem with the Duo was there's a single camera on the inside. You had to flip it around, open it, flip it all the way around, reposition and hold it, hope and pray that the screen's
God, it's such a nightmare.
And then take the photo, and then you would have to go back and undo it to review the photo. So I actually think taking photos on this thing is gonna be really cool, easy, and
And
seamless.
the
I
great
really do. I'm actually looking forward to it.
the great thing about Duo 2 is that if you really liked that way of doing things, you can still do it because there's still a front-facing camera, and you can still close it and take the photo if you really wanted to. I don't know why you would want to do that, but if you are a die-hard, I love the inside screen camera guy or lady or whoever, then you by all means can still do it that way.
Yeah. Surface Duo Team's awkward to use. Try a Z Flip.
Try Duo 1.
Try an Apple iPhone 13 Pro.
Max. Try the Max.
Pro
That
X.
is annoying to use.
Yeah, the
My
Max.
goodness.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why I'm still in the Mini, because the iPhone Pros and the Max are just. Have you picked up an iPhone Pro?
The Max is unbelievable.
They used to make fun of the Lumia 920 for being a brick.
Yeah.
The charlatans. You're all charlatans in this tech industry. All made fun of Lumia 920. The iPhone Pro is such a heavy log in your pants. That sounded weird, but and the Pro Max. Try using the Pro Max and taking photos and trying to hold it one-handed. It's difficult. And my Z Flip, I love the Z Flip. It's a two-handed device.
Yeah.
When I got to open two hands.
Yeah.
I don't do the whip thing because, oh my God, I know something I'm going to do that. I'm going to shoot across the supermarket. So there are trade-offs with these devices. But I will say this. I think the Duo 2 is easier to operate than the Z Flip is in terms of opening it, because this opens much more naturally. And I grip it a lot more easy. This one is a little bit, the Z Flip works better if you put a case on it. Gives you a lot more to grip and hold. Otherwise, it's very kind of small and slippery.
Surface Duo price has dropped a lot. Do you think it'll happen next year with Duo 2? I'd like to get one, but $1,500 feels a bit pricey to me. So historically, if history is to repeat itself, yes, they will cut the price. However, based on sort of what I know about what's next for Surface Duo as a product line, I think it would be against their Microsoft's own wishes to slash the price of the Duo 2. And this will become more clear in the next few weeks / months when I begin talking about what's coming after Duo 2. Once we sort of start having that conversation, I think you'll see why I'm thinking this. I don't know what they're going to do with the pricing of Duo 2. I really don't. But I think they'd be shooting themselves in the foot if they were to cut the price of the Duo 2 like they did the first Duo. I think the reason they did that for the first Duo is because they made a lot and they wanted to sort of shift stock. I think Duo 2, they've been much more conservative. If you look, at least in the UK, I don't know about the US or other stores, most of the units are out of stock, and the ones that are available in stock have release date been pushed back to November 30th because they just haven't got enough ready for the day one launch now. If you pre-order on day one or day two, then you'll get it on October 21st. However, if you were a few days later, the next sort of shipping wave is November 30th, which just sort of suggests how little they've made this time around. If they can sell all of their stock, then they don't need to cut the price. That's the difference between the Duo 1 and the Duo 2. So, yeah, like I said, we'll talk more about sort of the future of Duo and why I think that they won't cut the price of Duo 2 as significantly as they did with Duo 1 in the coming months.
Love those animated GIFs Dan's been using on the new Flip. Wonder if we can use them on Duo 2. You talk about the glance bar. When I asked, and from what I understand, as of now, those APIs are locked to preset features, but Microsoft could explore opening those up. I don't know if they could run full GIFs, and if they could, it would still be weird because it's a thing. But they may be a way to customize that stuff later on and do a little bit more with it. But we'll have to get the device out first, I think.
Any news on a non-foldable Surface phone coming in the future? No.
Also, similar question: would Microsoft make a gaming Surface? They've been asked that for a long time. I think no.
I think that's what the Xbox is.
Yeah, there's that. They are pushing PC gaming pretty hard, so I get the angle, and you could argue PC gaming is still massive and huge. So, but I really think they're kind of betting on this idea about cloud streaming and gaming being the future. This idea that you can use Surface Pro X and still play Destiny 2 on it, is going to be kind of where they want to go with that technology. And you're seeing that with the Surface Duo 2, right? That's what they're pushing. So,
right, a couple more questions and I need to head off. So get them in now. Last call. Do you guys
Plus
like the 7th anniversary Windows Insider wallpapers? Yeah, I thought they were nice.
I do. I'm using it right now, actually.
Nice.
I really do like it. Yeah, they're great. Does the Pen 2 sticks well onto Duo 2 without the charging case? Yes, it does.
It can stick, but it won't charge, and it's not aligned perfectly. It sort of sits a little bit higher than if you were using the charging case. The charging case magnets are like, they are stuck, whereas on the device, it's stuck just normally.
Is the Studio line officially dead? I don't think so, but Zach may have.
I don't know. Unfortunately, there were rumors that they were working on a modular version. Those rumors feel like they're 2 years old at this point. So I don't know what the plan is for the desktop. What they really need to do is, if they're going to do another one, is figure out how to make it cheaper, or at the very least have an entry level model that can be a sort of purchased by normal people rather than just studio professionals, essentially. Because that $3,500 starting price is just, it rules it out for basically everybody except for businesses or very successful creators.
Question: is a new pen better for artists? Well, as a non-artist myself, there are on YouTube some reviews done with Laptop Studio by actual illustrators, and yes, the consensus is that the pen is much better. The jitter when drawing diagonals slowly, which apparently is a problem, is still technically there a little bit, but it's
not as drastic as it used to be.
It's way better, way more improved. It's more consistent. The tip feels better. The controls are better. And overall, it just feels, the consensus seems to be from real artists that, yeah, it is a much better experience with the pen. It seems most reviews are super positive about the sound of Surface Laptop Studio. What's your opinion on it?
Yeah.
So in my review, I said, it's very good audio. I think it needs more bass and a little bit more richness. It's amazing what they did with it, considering it's got 4 speakers that are hidden. And it has Dolby Atmos, which helps a lot. I still am more impressed personally with the Surface Pro 8 speakers. I think they sound really, really good considering the device. I like to see a little bit more richness and bass with the Laptop Studio, but I'm not really complaining about it too much.
Any news on Surface Earbuds 2 with active noise cancellation? No, we have no info on the Earbuds 2 or if they will have ANC. Do you have good battery with the buds you're wearing, Dan?
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. To be fair, I only wear them usually for this podcast. So
I wear mine quite often, and honestly, I don't really ever worry about the battery. I've never heard them say, "Oh, you are low on battery," because I'll just wear them for X amount of hours and then put them in the case, and they'll charge them up again. And then every now and then, when I remember to do it, I'll just put it on the actual case on a USB-C charger for, I don't know, X amount of minutes, half an hour or so before I head out, and then that's fine. I literally have never heard them be like, "Oh, you are low on battery." So yeah, I think the battery life on them is great.
Yeah, I gotta ask my friend. He wears them, but yeah, if you notice, I'm using these instead of the Samsung ones. I still find these ridiculously comfortable for this podcast. They just are better for me. I should mention, Zach. You know what never came out was the Qualcomm Dev Kit.
Oh, yeah, the 7C thing. Oh, we should ping Microsoft or maybe Snapdragon.
I mean, it's October. That was supposed to be
that was supposed to be summer. That was summer. Do we have PR contacts for Qualcomm? I guess we do.
Of course.
We should ping them and ask them about that.
Can't wait to get the canned response from that one.
We meant next summer.
Will Windows 12 come?
Probably one day.
So maybe one day, maybe 3 to 5 years.
Yes. All right. I think that's enough for today.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll be back next Friday for a mammoth show by the sounds of things. Lots of things to talk about next week. It's going to be fun. Make sure you're there. Follow us.
And the Pro 8 held up.
Yes, it did. The Pro 8. Is it warm? Is it like the fans going or is it fine? I guess it shouldn't be.
Hear the fans a little bit. Might put my ear up to it.
But it's not running hot though.
I'm not even using it on the Ultimate Power, but it's
nice.
Fine.
All right, cool. Yes, we'll be back next Friday. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we go live. But until then, we will see you next time.
Bye.